This is James. He's a general contractor who was stuck trying to grow his business. He had tried organizing his company, hired better staff, was even working 70 hours a week, but nothing actually was helping to fix the overwhelm that he was feeling, which is why he reached out to me in December of 2023. And we started coaching. Within 1.5 years, his profit had doubled and he had shortly thereafter scaled up to 5 million in revenue. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the exact strategies we use to help him grow and how you can apply these same strategies inside your construction company. Now sit back and relax because this knowledge you're about to get is worth thousands of dollars. All right, so here's James. He was able to scale his company up to 5 million plus, or they're doing better now. And when we started, he was stuck in every part of his business. He was definitely, the cog in the machine that everything had to go through him. He was essentially wearing all the hats, and they were in a really great place to scale up and grow fairly rapidly, but without the systems and the right people, it was just becoming a bit of a mess. And that's why they reached out to me. This is one of our early coaching calls here with James. We often were on a call with his office admin, office manager, as well as later on a project manager when he had hired a project manager. So we had these group coaching calls regularly, very much aligned with what needs to get done, who's on track, keeping communication very high and moving the ball forward. So he was a residential and commercial general contractor, very strong reputation in his area, lots of demand for his services. They typically had a lot more inquiries and estimates to do than they could handle. And that was one of the bottlenecks of James, was he was still doing all the estimating and the project management and just couldn't keep up essentially. So they had jobs they just had to let go because they were too busy. Revenue was growing, but growth was creating a lot of stress, as you can imagine, with so many potential projects and things going on, but just not having the organization, the systems, the structure, the people to handle it. There's 4 big problems that we identified and worked on. The first one, kind of the biggest issue, was the owner bottleneck. As I mentioned, James was wearing all the hats in the business constantly. He was the one who put out fires. If anyone had a problem, they called James to fix it for them. No real time to really think strategically or think about putting in systems or processes. All the time was just going to running the business as it was, kind of running out of control. A lot of risk of burnout. You can maintain this for a while, but eventually this is going to catch up with everybody. And 70+ hour work weeks are just not sustainable. And growth was capped by James. Essentially, they were unable to grow with James being the bottleneck in the company. So the solution, the things that we worked on, was to restructure and hire strategically. So the things that we implemented here was we hired a project manager fairly early on. This was a huge kind of leap forward for James because now, yes, with any new person, you need to train them and there's that onboarding time, which is going to take time. But once they're in the role and they're able to operate and manage some part of the business without you, it just frees up like a whole new time, whole new world for you. And we didn't just go out and look for somebody and hire them right away. This was like a process that was planned as well as a system set in place. So we had an SOP, we had a structure in place. Not all the little, kinks were worked out necessarily, but there was something in place so that when a project manager was brought in, they had training, they had an operating procedure, they had a game plan to follow, essentially. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. They think, oh, just hire someone with experience, take over this role, then I don't have to do it anymore. And that just causes a lot of problems because you're not providing them with enough support or guidance for them to actually do the things that you think that they should be capable of doing. Over the course of our coaching as well, there was 2 new office admin staff. Both of them were kind of part-time with ability to grow. And that really freed up, again, James, as well as the office manager at the time, where we were able to build operating procedures and help get some of that, financials, that everyday admin stuff out of the way, dealing with, clients and paperwork and whatever. So huge step forward there. Clarified an org chart. I'm going to show you that in just a second here of what, like a typical org chart looks like and how James was a big part of all of it. And we were able to kind of free up his roles and time. And as I mentioned, we created systems training around those key roles. So like just hiring more people or hiring them and hoping that they'll kind of build a system for you is not going to work well. You'd really want to make sure you've got something in place before you get bring the people into the business. So moving on to the org chart here. This is a typical org chart for a construction company. And you're probably familiar, you probably are the owner, the CEO, the president at the top. And you also fill all of the senior management roles, depending on the size of your business. If you're in that 2 to 5 million range, you're probably filling all of the top seats of, you're the vice president or, chief engineer or operating officer of like sales and marketing, production, administration, and finance. So you are the senior management team essentially. And then if you're not out of these yet, as James was, he's still doing all the sales, doing all the project management. He had an office manager, which was great. So that admin office manager role was filled, luckily. And he had a bookkeeper. So the admin of finance was still taking his time, but he wasn't doing the hands-on type of work there, which is great, which is where a lot of you probably are if you're in that like 2 to 3, 4 million range. And the next step is to fill those roles. So we filled out the project manager role, which gave him a big step forward. And for those smaller projects, that project manager was also able to meet with clients as well and fill a bit of that sales role with the business. So as you can see with this org chart, the idea is you are probably filling a lot of these, or there's people in your business who aren't really fitting in these, or they have multiple roles that are not defined. And that's really where structure and bottlenecks you'll find when you don't have a clearly defined structure and roles with accountability, responsibilities, clear lines of communication, and everything that goes along with having a high functioning team. So the next big problem that we tackled was the scheduling of projects. So when we started, there was no real scheduling. It was simply, we think it's going to take this long. Oh, next week we've got this coming up, so we better call the trades and make sure that they're going to be there. If you asked for a schedule, no one had anything to show you essentially. So what happened with the negative impacts of this is you had trades overlapping. So it's, that same day delivery kind of thing where it's like, hey, we need you tomorrow or the next day. And luckily they had good tradespeople, but that really strains the relationships you have with your subcontractors, your trades, because yes, they want to do good work for you. They want to be a Johnny on the spot. But when you're calling them and they've got to jump ship or come running, it sets you up and sets them up for rushed and stressful project. There was delays because of no scheduling and ordering, and nothing was timed properly. Guesstimation on timeline. So guesstimation for we've talked about trades and subcontractors, but for clients as well. I'm sure you've been in that situation where you tell a client, this is like a 6-month project or 8-month project, and you get into it and it's just like dragging on or it's taking forever. The client's like, where are we at with the schedule? And there's just nothing clear. No one really knows besides like what's happening that day and maybe a few weeks in the future. So there's constant, where are we at? What's going on? And just a lot of stress throughout. So the solution that we put into place and what we implemented was we found that Microsoft Project was going to be the best fit for them. They were not using a specific project management software. Usually I would suggest that your project management software will have scheduling as a module in it and to use that because it will integrate with everything. For James, we wanted to use his existing kind of stack that he had, which was Google Drive and QuickBooks essentially. And then so we incorporated Microsoft Project because they needed like a standalone scheduling software. We built out templates. So now they could just pull in a template for, home builds, remodels. They did a bunch of commercial work and government work. So we had those templates in place, build out all the projects schedule for production pipeline. This was huge. This was a major step forward for them because they had so many projects and they had residential, they had commercial, they had some government work, they had, small kind of Mr. Fix-It sort of stuff. They had up to like massive $1 million projects. So they really didn't know when they could start projects or how, like what their capacity was as far as the business essentially. When we incorporated this, we had like a master dashboard that had all of the project schedules as, large line items. So, project 1, 6 months, project 2, that's going to be like a 3-week thing that we can plug in here. So now they could project. And when they got a call on the phone, hey, can you do our project for us? We want to start in 3 months or whatever. they can easily see their capacity. They can see how to move things around or where to fit projects in, and they can see when they can expect a lot of projects to line up. This can often happen as well, where you're super busy and you don't realize that you actually have like 2, 3, 4 projects that are all going to be kind of finishing within a month or two of each other. And if you don't have new projects scheduled into the pipeline, you may have a big lull in work. And this is often what you can feel with those ups and downs in business, where it's like super busy, pushing production. And all of a sudden, we don't have any work. I got to get on the sales. And you got this like teeter totter seesaw effect that never feels good. So get a good scheduling dashboard and templates and schedules for every project can alleviate a lot of that. Coordinating with trades, much better. Now, Mr. Electrician, they can give them a call. The project manager loved this so much because when the project manager came in, like she was the person that was the most experienced with the scheduling software and who I trained personally and set the system up with her. And now she can see, okay, I'm going to need an electrician in, 6 weeks, or we're starting the project today. I need to make sure the framing package is going to show up in 3 weeks or whatever. And it just clarifies so much and just decreases the whole stress of the project, because it's like, it's clockwork. This ends, that starts. And yeah, the schedule is going to change a little bit. There's unforeseen things, but at least everyone's like running and managing from a game plan, from something solid and specific. And we created along with this, so the schedule is a big step forward. And then the other component to kind of lock in that project management side of the business was quality control checklist. At the time, they had they still do have great carpenters, tradespeople craftspeople on site. And it was sort of just left up to them and their trades that they would do a good job. And the project manager, if they saw something out of place, they would mention it, but there was no real checklist or specific cadence of quality control. So what we did is we implemented checklists for all of the different stages. So checklist for getting the project started, making sure everything's, safety and protection and materials, everything's ordered. And then quality control for framing, foundation for framing, for rough-ins, for finishing, for whatever, right? So having those quality kind of check stops of like, we need to make sure the quality is at 100% before we get to the next stage. If you ever got to the end of a project and you've got this huge punch list at the end and it just seems to drag on, it's like, oh, we've got to we had that scratch on the countertop. Now the countertops are on back order. We've got to get the guy in there or whatever, right? And you end up like spending an extra couple of weeks at the end of a project. It's because the quality control process was not at a good level and didn't have those checks and balances. So this is what a good schedule will look like. This is not a Microsoft project, but it's a schedule that I built with a client. The Gantt chart view is similar to any scheduling software. You'll have your lists, and that's usually the lists are the easiest place to make updates to. But the Gantt chart is most visual and easy to see. What I want you to see on here, and the things that really improved with their scheduling at James's company there, is you can now put, client meetings, so the client knows when they're meeting and when you should be scheduling a client meeting. You've got buffers between stages. So as you've probably had before, especially with like rough-ins, your electrician, plumber, HVAC, and if one goes over, the other one doesn't want to work around them and you got to push them back or whatever. So put a little bit of buffer in there, knowing that the schedule is going to be changing, so you're not scrambling when inevitably something goes a little bit over schedule. Inspections as well. So if you got regular inspections on the project, have those. Another good thing that kind of next level for scheduling that I don't see a lot of people really doing well is put your ordering into the schedule. So that your finished carpenter is going to be showing up on a certain week, or your cabinetry is going in on a certain week. That means, minus whatever it is, if cabinetry takes 6 weeks to manufacture, that means 7 weeks prior to installation, you need to order it, or 8 weeks before installation, you need to order it to ensure that it gets there and is delivered on time. Long lead times, cabinetry, windows, doors, flooring, whatever, those types of things that have any kind of lead time of a couple of weeks needs to be in the schedule. All right, so now we're going to move on to number 3. The third place that we really kind of locked in and tightened up was the financial visibility. So there was no job costing happening as far as knowing how much labor was being spent at specific sites or by a certain cost code. So we implemented some cost codes and different things like that. Impact of having, weak financial visibility is you're kind of guessing at your profitability. Your labor costs, are kind of like Well, I'm not too sure, as long as we can meet payroll every 2 weeks or month and, hopefully we're doing good. There's inefficiencies that come up when you don't know your numbers and you can't visually see what's going on per project. You're sailing your ship blind, essentially, is the analogy I like to use. You're out there, you have no idea if you're going into the rocks or shark infested waters or even heading in the right direction because you're not running your business by the numbers. It's like a big black area that you just have no idea what's going on. Turn on a light, get the right financial controls and visibility in place. And you probably overspending on labor, materials, all sorts of of things. And you cannot make sound business decisions without having good job costing and financial visibility in place. So from there, the solution that we integrated was we installed employee time tracking. So they had an app from their accountant where their guys were able to put in their jobs and their hours, but it wasn't tracking the actual tasks that they were doing on the projects. They weren't able to use cost codes with it or do proper job costing. So again, trying to stay with their existing stack. There's lots of great software out there. The least amount of changes or software that you need to incorporate, the better. The more moving parts, the more complex it gets. So they're already using QuickBooks. We set up a system using QuickBooks with QuickBooks Time to start tracking their employees' tasks per project and the projects. We created a really clean workflow for invoicing, for payment processing, as well as providing true job costing visibility. So we were able to, utilizing QuickBooks, it was not an easy thing because a lot of times like a project management software that's specific for construction is going to have this type of module in there for job costing. QuickBooks, there's options there. You can make it work. It's not really designed specifically for this, but we were able to get a really nice system in place where they had projects in QuickBooks and they were able to see specifically tied into payroll as well as expenses where every job was at, and as well as labor burdens. So because they had a lot of different labor rates, depending on the type of construction that it was, and they had to have specific rates and visibility for the government type projects, it was a little bit difficult to know exactly where the labor burden and rates and all that kind of stuff was. So we were able to clarify that and work with their accounting team to really make this all seamless, where we were able to send, export spreadsheet, send it specifically to the accountant, and they were able to run payroll as well as a number of other things. So a lot of little intricate parts. And this is where you as the business owner, for you to figure this out and have the time, wherewithal, knowledge, it's unreasonable with everything else you have in the business. And that's why if you want systems like this, you want someone specifically to be an integrator and put this stuff in place, reach out to us. You can work directly with me in the comments or in the description below. There's a link, click the link and get on a call with us. We have done for you programs as well as done with you programs, and we can help you get this all in place, get the help you need, and it'll just make your life so much easier. An example, easy SOP document, standard operating procedure. This is an example that we have just, the first page, but essentially every new employee that came into the business, if you've ever had your employees try to fill out hours on their phone in some sort of app, you know that half of them probably don't do it properly. Half of them may not even do it. They wait till the weekend or the day before payday to, get in their hours or whatever. So that can all be mitigated. It's never going to be 100%, but when you have proper onboarding, you have leadership to explain why they need to do this, why it's so important, and what the expectations are every day. They're filling in their hours by task, by project. Here's the SOP document. This is what your phone looks like. This is what you press. Like, making it as foolproof as possible so that you and your team aren't dealing with a whole bunch of people that don't know what's going on, essentially. So that's just an example of one of the, QuickBooks Workforce SOP that we made that they could give specifically to the employees so that they knew how to do the time tracking properly. Put on to big problem number 4 was no systemized processes. They had a number of people in the business. Everyone was sort of running their own playbook or their own show. I can't remember if there was any, but there's very little documented processes of what people were actually doing on a daily basis. It was more like they just figured it out for themselves. And I mean, they were a solid team. So I don't want you to think for one moment that they didn't have like good communication and extremely amazing culture inside their company. They were just missing that structure, that integration, that implementation of, the systems and the processes, and just that the kind of outside knowledge of this is how like a really good organized company operates, and these are the pieces that we need to get in place, and then have like streamlined guidance of like what's most priority, what's the steps here. So some of the negative impacts that they were feeling from, not having these systems in place was inconsistent estimating. James was doing all of the estimating. They had an estimating spreadsheet essentially, but he was always just kind of pulling from his knowledge, and he was super knowledgeable, great at what he did, but everything hinged on him. Everything went through him, and there was no real like pricing data or templates or specific kind of standardized markups and things like that, depending on projects. Client expectations. This was something that was unclear too, where often projects were started. There was no real discussion of what the client can expect, or again, they didn't have schedule. So it was just the client kind of expectation and communication was unclear from the beginning. And then admin confusion. So who does what and how? As I mentioned, there was an amazing office manager. She was kind of doing everything on the admin side, and then they added more people, but it was still a little bit unclear of like which parts did she do, what did James do, what did the field crew do, who was responsible, and who specifically owned the separate processes of the company. And as you add more people, this becomes more and more critical. And this is also why if you ever hired someone and realized that you actually made more work for yourself, because now you have to explain everything to them and train them and have more people and more fires to put out, essentially, this is why, because you don't have compartmentalized processes that are owned and responsible, accountable to a specific person/role. New hires learning by trial and error. So kind of same thing, no real good onboarding process, training solution in place to really train someone on what is the specific thing that they should be doing. The big solutions that we put into place essentially were standard operating procedures and then training dashboard with training videos. So we got an estimating SOP. So now this is how we run an estimate. Project management SOP. This was huge. How do you talk to trades? How do you talk to clients? How do you, put schedules together? What are the quality control checks? What needs to happen, XYZ down the stage? Financial management SOP. How do we invoice? How do the employees track their hours? How do we do the job costing reports? Everything is in the financial management SOP for that. Client process SOP. So how do we set expectations with a client? How do we onboard new clients? How do we communicate with them, setting that up? Then we had a lead intake system. So how do we qualify all these projects? As I mentioned, they were overly busy. There was no shortage of work for them. It was often a matter of, we've got 10 estimates to do. Which ones do we actually have time or want to estimate for? And people are waiting weeks, sometimes I want to say months, but like over a month to just have their estimate get into the process. So we created a lead intake so that they had qualifying questions. They could then better differentiate which projects are better suited and a good fit for us, and which ones can we, be upfront with and just say we don't have time, or it's not, aligned with what we do as a business. The employee training dashboard, I'll show you that in a moment, but essentially we set up an employee training dashboard. So now the employees could have easy access to the SOPs and the training videos. So you hire a new admin, they need to know how to do the financial, management of the business. Go to the training dashboard, click on financial management. Here's the SOP. Here's a training video explaining exactly what to do. Everything was there, easy for them to get trained up. Video-based onboarding. So same thing with training and onboarding. A video does so much better than just a written black and white SOP. When you have like a document SOP, people may read through it, but it's hard to really understand what is going on. Even if you have pictures in there or links to things, it's a good first step. And it's really nice to have that resource of like, this is specifically what we do. But when you have a video along with it, explaining what it is or showing it on a computer screen, the training is 10 times more effective. People prefer learn through video, just how it is. You get much more information out of it. And then we structure their Google Drive. So they were using Google Drive, but we were able to structure their folder system. We set up some automations with Zapier so that they could have like automatic firing of new clients, setting up folder structures. It was much easier for people to find what they needed to find, because before that, it was just unorganized. Things were kind of thrown here, there, everywhere over the years. So we got rid of the clutter, organized it, and just totally restructured their Google Drive. Here's an example of the training dashboard that we implemented. It is a website. New employees are given the website. They essentially have access to watch a video telling them how the training happens. There's a knowledge base. So this is like all extracurricular, extra, videos or blog articles or whatever that could incorporate with the training. And then there's online courses. So along with our coaching program, we have training programs and courses that your project manager can take, that your financial manager can take, and they have access to that. And you can control who has access to what, depending on their role. And then you have all of the different parts of the business. So estimating, project management, sales, finances, professional development, whatever it is. And again, you've got your SOP, the training video, you've got the document, and then you have a workflow. So workflow is like, again, that next level. We don't take any chances essentially with training people or communicating or having them know what's happening. I mentioned the other things, the video and the SOP, but the workflow is what the visual representation of the steps look like and the decisions that need to get made. And when you have all three of those in place, as long as the person is competent, has some awareness and can learn, they will know at a very high level. Yes, they're still need someone to kind of walk them through or answer questions. But after going through those three resources, they should have a very clear picture of exactly what they need to do and how they need to do it. They're building solutions to those four big problems that we mentioned. Their results were able to scale up to past 5 million, increase the profit margins. That's a difficult thing to do when you're scaling a business as they did. Their company grew 150%. Typically, when you start to scale and grow up a business, because you're hiring people and you're taking on more projects, probably, purchasing more equipment, things like that, you'll often find as you grow, your margins decrease. But we were able to increase margins while still massively growing their business. Financials became much clearer. Owner got out of the daily operation, so getting that project management role, also bringing in one of the field guys to start with the estimating process. So that was something that was in the works, and have a well-trained team of leaders. As I mentioned, they had a great culture. Everybody was on the same page, helpful, wanting to, there was none of this kind of politics that you can often find in companies, but we were starting to implement and train leaders. So we've talked about the systems. The next kind of step that really enables the business owner to level up is when they can be a leader of leaders. So project manager's a leader, everybody in the company essentially, but office manager, those are leaders in the company that have to then be able to lead the next people, whether that's the field crew, the trades, the other office staff, whatever it may be. And that's where, a lot of the magic really comes into play. And these are some of the amazing results that we achieved. Now, you have three options. You can watch 100 more videos and never take any action. 2, you can try to figure this all out on your own, spend years learning through the mistakes. Or 3, you can apply to work with us and fast track the process of systemizing and scaling your construction company using the first link in the description below. The choice is yours.